I never walk outside without a scissors in my pocket, and while I'm watering, I just quick, cut off some heads, and you will be amazed at how much more prolific your flower plants are.
Welcome to Funeral Potatoes and Wool Mittens, a show for people who embrace the warm and cozy spirit of everyday living in the northern Midwest. From the blog Random Sweets, I'm your host, Stacy Mergenthal. It's the end of July, and we're in the midst of cultivating and harvesting our gardens, many of us with high temps and fleeting rain showers, if any rain. So today I'm talking all things summer gardening with two special guests, Lynn Darnall and her daughter Sarah Alfano, owners of Medary Acres Greenhouse, which is a 71-year-old, third-generation business in Brookings, South Dakota. And we missed out on Brian Darnall joining us for this episode, but hopefully we'll get him on a spring episode because, you know what, he's been at Medary Acres since the late 1960s. We're covering a variety of topics today, from basics like watering and deadheading to the value of mulching tomato plants, how to properly cut stems so that you can bring the beauty of your flowers indoors, natural ways to keep plants healthy, and how to divide peonies. And when I ask how to protect my plants and vegetables from critters like rabbits, raccoons, and deer, Lynn surprises me with a super special spray that was hard for her to say. Even though I don't want to think about it yet, we also talk a little bit about how to prepare for winter, from what to do with our pots and perennials to a fun way for plant lovers to get through the cold months. If you've listened to at least a few episodes of Funeral Potatoes and Wool Mittens, you know we always find a way to talk about food, and today is perfect because what's better than eating foods fresh from your garden? Sarah shares a mocktail recipe with a fresh herb and a salsa recipe, which I have made now, and this will now be my go-to salsa recipe because it's even better than the pico de gallo that I've been making. And Lynn has a secret natural sweetener up her sleeve that she dishes all about. It's the stevia plant. Lynn and Sarah leave us with gardening advice for novice gardeners and the more seasoned gardeners who may have been around long enough to remember what gardening was like in the late 1960s. So let's go talk to Sarah and Lynn for an episode that's so full of information. You'll learn about rhizomes, nubs, and a beer fridge. Lynn and Sarah, welcome to Funeral Potatoes and Wool Mittens. Thank you for joining me today. We don't have Brian with us, but we'll probably still talk about Brian.
Of course, the old perennial.
No, right. Brian, we miss you.
Shout out to Brian.
Well, why don't you just give us a little background about Medary Acres Greenhouse in Brookings, a little bit of history about your business, kind of your growth, and just share with people in case they haven't been to your greenhouse.
Well, I'll start, Stacy. We are a family-owned greenhouse that just finished up our 71st season, and we are really proud of that. And it was started by a gentleman by the name of Gene Mahegan, and Brian bought the business from Gene, who happened to be his father-in-law and who was an incredible mentor to us. And then Brian and I married. We have been running the greenhouse since Brian's been there since the late 60s. I've been there since the late 70s. And we had two daughters, and our youngest daughter, Sarah, joined us in the company, and she will be taking over the business. And so we are very proud to say that we are a third generation business, which in this day and age is quite an accomplishment. And we're really proud of it. We're really proud of Sarah. And it really is. It really is a great accomplishment. We have grown exponentially over the years. When Brian and I first took over the business, it was these little tiny greenhouses that had been built on about $50, and we could they were pretty hodgepodge. And if Gene Mahegan were here today, he'd laugh and totally agree with what he had done. Our selling house used to be, or what we call the head house, used to be an old chicken coop. That was in the days when you repurposed everything. You didn't waste anything. And Brian and I thought there was a lot more potential for growth of business if we pretty much started over. And we pretty much knocked everything down, started over, building greenhouses that are, we're not a parking lot greenhouse, that's for sure. We have 11 greenhouses, and they are a minimum of 200 feet long. One is almost 300 feet long. And that was the start of our business really taking off and growing, and us being able to offer a lot more product that people were really interested in.
The flower shop, there was a flower shop in the front. That building is still there, right?
That's correct.
And then that wasn't the head house.
Right. The head house was that.
Oh, the hen house. You're saying hen house. Okay.
Well, our head house.
Okay.
Well, there's a bunch of women working there, so there's lots of names it could be called. But but it was this, well, Sarah, I think will agree, it was kind of this creepy old building that it had been repurposed. The door always stuck. It didn't even have a window in it.
It was very dark, not a lot of sunlight in there.
Right.
Which is funny for a greenhouse.
Right. And so as our business was growing, we didn't have an adequate number of cash registers. Honestly, we were still using a cash register that had a hand crank on it. And that's very provincial, and our customers loved it, but it just isn't conducive to growth and the kind of business that we thought was available there. So at the end of one season, probably 15, 20 years ago, I looked at Brian and I said, if we don't build a new selling house, I quit.
Quit your own family business.
I'm going to quit our own family business, and I'm going to sit at home and eat bonbons.
Which anybody who knows you knows that you would not do, but okay.
No, I might quit working, but I probably wouldn't sit around and eat bonbons. I'd be out in my garden. No. But anyway, Brian knew, I don't think that was much of a threat, but Brian knew that we needed to do something to grow this business. And so we brought in a big excavator and we knocked that building down and built a whole new selling house, which now, it's like butter, and it's so conducive for our customers. We believe in our customers being able to shop. So we have walkways. Every walkway in Medary Acres is cement, and it is ADA accessible. We have 6 checkout lanes. We have staff that, of course, loves gardening, loves customers, loves people. And so it's really come a long way.
You have carts for people to fill up.
We do.
They're going down the aisles. Yep. Now, do you have the old cash register? Because I just feel like you've got it stuck back there somewhere.
Of course we do. Yeah. One time a phone guy came out to help us hook up our Wi-Fi or something, and he looked around and he goes, "Oh my gosh, this is like an office museum here."
The greenhouse is open itself for the public. You kind of open your doors in April. People can kind of come start looking around if they can buy the potato sets and things at that time. And then when the weather is nice for what they can plant, you guys are open essentially a couple of months out of the year for the public. But you start all your, or most at least that I know of, all of your things in your seed house, or what you call it, where you plant. Your employees are in there like in February already planting, right?
Yeah, it's usually around like Valentine's Day, but it seems like the past few years, there's always like a giant storm around that time. We can't get our supplies, and none of our staff can like actually physically get to the greenhouse. So we aim for Valentine's Day, but it seems like it's been usually a little bit later than that the past few years. But yeah, staff starts coming in. We start getting in our tiny little plugs that we transplant into the containers we want to sell. sell them in. I start seeding some of the really slow growing things like peppers and some of the herbs and things like that that just take a really long time. Yeah, like in February. So it's kind of a longer process than you might think, especially for certain things.
And then the rest of the year, I know you don't just close up shop and head out until the next spring, right? You're improving, you're repairing things, you're building, planning for next year, ordering your products, all that kind of thing. So even though customers are not being able to shop all year long, you guys are working on this all year long. Although, Sarah, I see that part of the summertime you're spending, you in a band called Hot Freaks?
Yes.
Tell me about that real quick, because that's kind of a cool little piece.
So that's been a really crazy thing the past almost 2 years now. I was in Hot Freaks when I was in college, and then for a couple years after college. We all lived in Minneapolis at the time. And then everyone kind of went their separate ways, moved away, focused on other projects. And then during the pandemic, we were all kind of checking in with each other and saying like, hey, I miss you guys. I hope you're doing okay. Like if and when this ever ends, like let's get together and do a reunion show. That'd be really fun. And right around that time, so it was summer 2 years ago, we found out that one of our songs had gone viral on TikTok. And we didn't even really know what that meant because none of us even have a TikTok. But basically we sold this song that had gotten really popular to a record label for a lot of money. And now the band is back together. We recorded a whole new album last year that's coming out in September.
Do you jam to that music then when you're gardening?
I definitely have, especially when we were trying to, tweak the new recordings and figure out how we wanted them to sound. I would just like put headphones in and do my greenhouse work while trying to figure out what the songs should sound like.
Right. That's really fun. So now you're going to take over the business at some point, whenever Brian and Lynn let you, right? Your mom and dad.
Yeah, they can take a while.
You've been involved since you were a kid because you grew up being in that greenhouse, and whatever you could do to help, you were. And I remember back in the day when you and your sister Sam were in the advertising, the videos and the photos and things. That was pretty fun.
It was fun.
And then your staff at one time, I mean, I know you've had some retirements and such in the last few years and have a few coming up, but at one time, Medary Acres Greenhouse had to have had hundreds of years of combined experience between Brian, Lynn, a handful of the staff members who had been there for just tons of years. Did you ever calculate at one time what that was?
Oh my gosh.
We thought about it, Stacy, but if you just want to, I'll just throw out some numbers. We have a staff of 30 and 18 of them traditionally are full-time. And of those 18, the average length of time at working at the greenhouse at one time was 25 years, and I believe it's 30 years now.
Wow,
and
unbelievable.
It is. And we place so much of our success on that staff. They are the most engaged, friendly people you will ever be around. They all love to garden. In June, when we leave, we've been working hard. It's hot. It's a physical job. Everybody kind of drags out of there. And a week later, I'm not kidding you, I start getting phone calls. I start getting emails from that staff saying, okay, now we found something else we need to try next year. And this one thing that we tried this year, I'm not liking it very much. And I give them about a week to rest, and then it starts. And we are so fortunate. And the very cool thing about Medary Acres is Brian and I have never thought we had all the good ideas. And so our staff knows that. And when they come to us, whether it's a marketing idea or it's a display idea or whether it's a product idea, we listen. And many, many times we implement it. And I think that's why our staff is so good. They know that they are a very integral part of the company. And so yesterday I went on a walk with one of our employees, and she already had a whole list of things that I needed to know about, and it is awesome. They all respect Sarah and her abilities. But now Sarah has started to bring on her own staff because, let's face it, our staff, Brian and I and our staff, we're all going to start retiring here sometime soon,
Yeah.
And Sarah has started bringing on a staff that is equally as incredible. They are bringing the same types of ideas and energy to the table, and they'll just take it to the next level. Sarah has one young lady that works there who has her own high tower greenhouse in her yard, and she calls us or texts us all the time with how she's growing her vegetables. And this high tower thing has really taken off, and growing vegetables on trellises. And anyway, so trust me, the company's going into very, very good hands, and the next generation of gardeners that has even more good ideas.
I noticed you implemented some biodegradable planters.
I can't remember if this was our second year or our third year of doing those. But it is nice to hear that people notice and like them and appreciate them, because obviously, we want to cater to customers. And I do just think people feel better about, obviously if you're gardening, you do care about the environment and just what you're doing and how you can help and how you can, you want to make things beautiful. You don't want to create a lot of garbage, I think is what most gardeners feel.
There are more products available on the market too. And then you bring in, more biodegradable products available on the market, but then you bring in this fresh perspective of, maybe we need to be a little more careful with the environment, which is what Sarah's generation is bringing. And it's fabulous.
Let's move in a little bit to just some gardening tips and ideas and things. So we're in zone 4 here in the area that we're in South Dakota, Minnesota. Is that right? Zone 4?
Mm-hmm.
And our flowers are blooming now. The vegetables are growing. And so just kind of talk about some of the tips and things that you guys have seen or that One thing that just seems so simple, but I think about this when I'm doing it, is when I'm deadheading my flowers in my container gardening, or anywhere, but right now mostly what I have is in containers. But how to deadhead properly, because I used to just pick off the flower, like just pick off the spent bloom, but that's not the right way to do it, is it?
Well, what we recommend, Stacy, is that isn't necessarily the wrong way to do it, but you're wrong. No.
You're so PC. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that.
What is better is if you can go to the stem that flower was on and pinch the pod and all, that was holding the flower, that little cup or whatever it is that was holding the flower. The reason for that is every time you pinch that off, it is amazing how many more flowers come. If you don't pinch that little cup or the holder of the flower off, the plant continues to try to send energy there. Well, it's not going to set another blossom there. And so why waste that energy? Pinch that off. And I am surprised at myself. I've kind of turned into a little bit of a rose gardener. And if you keep your dead roses pruned off, your rose bush, whether it's a shrub rose or a mini rose or a multiflora or grandiflora, sets blossoms so much faster. So like I said, there's a better way. It's not wrong, but there's a better way. And like on geraniums, that big, beautiful flower, if you can go down that stem and take that stem out, again, the plant has more energy to set more blossoms, and you don't end up with this stick look. The stem of the geranium turns brown and it looks like you've got straw, big pieces of straw stuck in your pot. Or so there's just a lot of good reasons to go ahead and reach in there, have a scissors with you. I never walk outside without a scissors in my pocket, and while I'm watering, I just quick, cut off some heads, and you will be amazed at how much more prolific your flower plants are.
What about picking flowers when you go outside and you have zinnias and all these beautiful flowers that look nice in a vase, like cut flowers? Does that hurt anything?
Absolutely not. You're doing the same thing. You're actually pruning the plant, letting the energy go to more flowers. Again, first of all, right now you've probably noticed that lilies are just exploding everywhere. They're
they're amazing
fantastic.
right now.
Yes, and if you cut those stems, I guess I'm thinking more like daylilies, that an individual flower is on a stem. If you cut that down lower into the plant, you're going to have a longer stem to put in your vase too. You'll be able to do more creative designing with a longer stem flower than a little tiny short stem that has to like rest on the edge of a cup or a vase or something to get water. Hanging on there trying to get a drink of water. And one thing I would suggest, Stacy, about when you cut flowers in your garden, I say people should cut flowers out of their gardens every day. But if you don't want to do that every day, you should bring them in and enjoy them. And I would suggest that you take like an ice cream bucket out with you with lukewarm water in it. And when you cut that flower, instantly put it in that pail so that they last longer, they last better, they get a water source right away. And then when you get in the house, then you can, rearrange them, recut them, and put them in a vase. But I think it's really important. I know it's kind of fun to take a basket or a trug out and lay your flowers in there. But I think you're better off putting them in water immediately when you cut them. And that's coming from my florist background.
What about peonies? I love peonies, and I have this peony bush that is the most beautiful flower. I got it from you guys quite a few years ago. One time, without telling me, Jason moved it, and I panicked, and I swear I was in tears. You're ruining it. It's never going to come back, and I can't find another one like it. I think it was like I swear something Hawaiian was in the name.
Ooh,
I don't know, but it's amazing. Anyway, it did bloom again after he moved it, but I love to cut those and bring them in the house. And I bring out a pail or like a tote kind of with water to put the whole flower there to get those ants off before I bring them in the house. Do you have, is that a way, or is there a better way to get all those ants off?
I think that sounds like a perfect way to get the ants off. And, how many of us truly want bugs in our house? None of us. But in reality, a peony will not open without the assistance of those ants. Right. And so to dip them in water to get rid of the ants is brilliant, and again, to put those in water right away when you bring them in, and or when you cut them in the garden. And on a peony, I just cut it down to, how there'll be a set of leaves, and then there's quite a bit of stem and another set of leaves. I always just cut mine right above a set of leaves just because it looks nice, but then I get to bring that flower in. So don't get discouraged by those ants. They're doing their job, and dipping them in water to get rid of them works well.
Right. Okay. Which also makes me wonder, because one year I cut some off when they were still kind of at the bulb stage. And I didn't know at the time that the ants have to open it, but I had heard that if you cut them off, wrap them in like a saran wrap and put it in the refrigerator, they'll stay nice, and that you can bring them out 2 weeks later and they'll open and bloom. Well, I forgot them because I put them in the beer fridge out in the garage, and I forgot they were out there. So I don't know if that works or not. I'm assuming
your fridge strikes again.
Is the motto here, or is the lesson here that you need to drink more? Or
I must have to make more trips to the beer fridge.
Right.
Sometimes having a beer while you're doing a little gardening is kind of a nice thing.
That is something I've learned from Medary Acres, is drinking while you're gardening.
Just a little, not too much.
No.
Stacy, I know that commercial florists, that's what they do. Now, I don't know about the saran wrap. I have heard newspaper or not necessarily heavy butcher paper, but maybe even like a parchment paper. You wrap those heads, put them in the refrigerator in water. And I know that that's what commercial florists do. And then you bring them out when say you cut these peonies and you don't need them for a wedding for 10 more days. You bring them out maybe 3, 4, 5 days before that put them in your, room temperature room in water, and then they start opening up. So I'm a little leery about the saran wrap. I'm leery of any kind of plastic around any kind of plant material, or even vegetables, like your potatoes, onions, when you harvest them. So your process is right. I would just use paper instead of plastic.
So once again, I'm not wrong, but there's a better way to do it.
Stacey. You're not wrong. There's just a better way.
They need to breathe is what I'm thinking. They didn't breathe when they were in that saran wrap. So
right. That's a real big no. Plastic is a real big no for storing your vegetables during the winter. Your potatoes, your carrots, your onions. They really do need to breathe. They're better off in cardboard boxes, or my mom used to just lay them on a table she had down in the basement so that they could still breathe, not develop mold, but cardboard boxes are much better than plastic.
And isn't it crazy when you go to the produce section at any market and all of the fruits they're selling are in these stupid plastic containers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they're not meant to stay in there, but it's crazy. Well, let's talk about watering, because Lord knows around here we have had to be watering because a lot of us are in drought areas, and especially container gardening. I don't care if it rains in the morning, you still need to water them, right? So there's always this debate about, do you water your flowers in the morning or do you water them in the evening? People have different opinions about that, but I think I know what the better answer is.
Now I'm scared. I feel like I'm going to answer wrong.
Well, I water mine in the morning because I think that then they're wet and they stay nice. They can kind of dry out throughout the day and drink that water, where I'm always afraid if I water them at nighttime, they sit there wet. And I think I've heard that they can be more susceptible to getting disease or mold, or, because they're not really being able to dry out. So I don't really know what the better is, but
I think that thought process is definitely, accurate, that if you're watering at night and then things are kind of sitting wet, might not be as good as if you water in the morning and then they kind of dry out throughout the day. And also just, you got to think about the person doing the watering. Like, I don't want to go out when it's, the hottest part of the day, like 4 to 6 p.m. and water for an hour, because it usually takes me about an hour to do my stuff. So kind of just out of being a little selfish, I water in the morning when it's cooler.
Right.
Well,
so
when I was
no wrong way, but
no, there isn't. There isn't. And when I was in college, my hort professor said, well, here's the deal. If you water them in the evening, then they have all night to recover from the heat and the wind of the day. If you water in the morning, then they're, they've got a fighting chance during the day in these lovely South Dakota days, And so there was an extension specialist on a show I was watching the other day, and he suggested between 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. And I thought, well, that's a good compromise. I'm not going to get up at 4 a.m. to water, but that was when
I'm sure there are people who do that, but
or if you have an automatic sprinkler system or something, that you could set. But you're absolutely right about the fungus and disease problems, Stacey. But it seems like if we have warm enough nights, that helps too. Then then the plant takes up the moisture. Takes up the moisture. And so I don't know, it's whatever anybody wants to do.
And I guess the answer is as long as you water them every day, because it's so important when it gets really dry, especially the containers. But
and I know this is going to be news to a lot of people and they might not agree, but I'm here to tell you that rain, although that is the ideal way to water flower beds, it really does not water your pots and your containers. By this time, your plants are so thick that truly the rain does not get to the soil surface. And so you have to water your pots in heat like we've been having every day, and depending on the size of your pot. But just know that rain really does not affect pots and containers in a good way.
Sure. But if it hails like it did last night, all my pots were full of hail. And so I thought, well, hey, that's a
Oh,
good way to water them because it's just going to slowly sit there and melt. So maybe I'll just start putting ice in there every day.
There you go. There you
4
go.
a.m. and I'm out putting ice.
4 a.m. ice bath.
Oh,
And another thing that I learned from Medary Acres, because I was young when I was starting to learn how to garden and do these things from you guys, but I would probably just stand over my flowers and water. Didn't realize that you really shouldn't be getting your whole entire plants wet, that it's best to kind of just water down into the soil. Is that correct?
Yep. Get down
Okay.
in there.
Okay.
on
I
a
was
lot
worried
of
about that.
Yeah, on a lot of things, that's the best way. And, why would you want to pelt down your beautiful plants that are standing up so nice in a pot? It just makes sense to water it at the bottom. And there again, it helps. It's a more preventative way on, to prevent fungus and disease. And things like your tomato plants, they, it's really important to put mulch around the base of your tomato plants, because if there is fungus in your soil and you water, that soil splashes up on the tomato. And many times that's how a tomato plant gets fungus, from the splash from the ground. So if you put mulch, such as I like organic type things, like just your grass clippings, and that not only helps hold the moisture, but it keeps down any fungus from splashing up on the tomato plant.
Could you practice that in anything, like in the pots, if you wanted to do like an organic mulch or something, just to kind of keep moisture in too, or would that not make a difference?
I don't know if in pots it would make such a difference. What I'm finding this year, Stacy, is driving me crazy, is I have some huge pots on my back deck, and my plants will be doing great. I'm out there watering, and we were gone for a couple days, and I came back, and the centers of 2 of my plants were dead. And I thought, I was so careful not to water in there. What, right in the center, what happened? And I looked closer, and in that 2 days, rabbits had taken grass clippings from our lawn, burrowed in there, and made a nest. And so I'm like, I don't know, you might not want to put grass clippings on your pots, because then the rabbits build nests. So those nests promptly got pulled out of there, and some choice gardening words were mentioned. And there were no babies in there. It might have been different if there had been baby bunnies in there, but I quick pulled those grass clippings out and actually threw them in the garbage so that they couldn't find them, to put them back in the pot.
Oh yeah, they're smart little suckers. You're right. They would have done that.
They're crafty.
And you can never overwater, really, when it's so hot, right?
You absolutely cannot. No.
Yeah. And just make sure your pots have drainage holes, because that, if as long as you have a drainage hole, you're not going to overwater when it's like this.
Right. And that's a good thing to mention too. I don't think I have any traditional pots out right now. They're all vintage oil barrels or old milk carrier bucket things, all that kind of stuff. But I always make sure that we drill holes in them so that there's some good drainage.
If you accidentally forget the drainage part, what'll happen is you'll figure it out real fast, because your plants will start floating. And I've done it. I've had other friends do it. They're like, all of a sudden my plants were like way at the top of the container, kind of leaning out, and I'll reach in and push the soil, and it's like, oh yeah, no drainage hole on this one. Right. Yeah. And you won't believe how many gallons of water run out when you do drill the bottom.
Drill. Yeah. Well, and if we do another episode for the spring, we'll talk about all those things, like drilling the holes. And if I have big, huge pots and planters and things, dramatic statement pieces, kind of how to fill those things without it filling dirt, and making things work like that, because there's all cool tricks about doing that. But what are some of the common, like, bugs, or we have aphids and Japanese beetles and different things, non-intrusive, or what am I trying, more organic ways to get rid of things?
Both Sarah and I like to garden organically, and honestly, at Medary Acres, if we use any kind of pest control, it is just on the crop that's infected. We never just wholesale spray or, treat things. And so I think our customers like that too. And so, Sarah, I'll just mention a couple, and then if you've got a couple you want to throw in, but like aphids can be a problem, this time of the year, although maybe a little bit less than some other bugs. But what I do when I see something that has aphids will usually congregate on one or two stems and just be real thick. I will actually cut those stems off, take them to the garbage, and then sometimes they'll just move on to a different plant, or they will clear up. That's very organic. You're not using anything. Sarah, what are some of your tricks?
I have used in the past, and you can usually find it like at hardware stores. We sell it when we're open too, but obviously this time of year when we're not around, you can find it at most hardware stores. Neem oil is it's a natural, you can use it for mold, fungus, bugs. It's kind of just a cure-all. And it's, especially if you have stuff that you're going to eat and you feel kind of weird about using a little bit more intense chemicals. The neem oil is natural. I think you just have to wait like a day or two after you spray your plant to harvest. But that's a good, if you do feel like you need something above and beyond just trimming off bugs, that's a good kind of like natural alternative to other like sprays and powders. And we were kind of talking too before we got on that, like we were saying with watering and how you have to do it every day, and like putting the wood chips or mulch around your tomatoes, things like that. Like if you are watering consistently and your plants are healthy, they have a lot better chance of not getting diseases and bugs in the first place, because usually plants that are kind of stressed from not being watered enough or not being healthy in general are the ones that bugs and diseases are going to go for in the first place. So just as like a general rule of thumb, like healthy plants tend to stay healthy.
So they're kind of going after the vulnerable.
Yeah, like if you've been gone for a while or you forgot to water and your plants are already a little, maybe a little wilted, a little stressed, those are the ones that are more susceptible to getting bugs and diseases in the first place. Or if for some reason they're, maybe you didn't get around to planting everything and they're still in like the little itty bitty, 6-packs or containers or whatever. And so they're not getting good like airflow and good light. That's when they can be kind of susceptible to.
Stacey, I was just going to say that, when a plant is stressed from, say, drought, that they really are more susceptible to bugs. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. I have a fairly good sized iris patch, and irises tend to bloom earlier, later in the spring, early summer. And then I have some rose bushes right next to it, and my rose bushes were constantly full of bugs, like spider mite, and I'm like, now what is going on here? And I finally figured out that just because your irises are established in a big plant doesn't mean they don't need watering. And I started watering my iris, and I haven't had bugs on my roses again. So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So my iris rhizomes were stressed, even though they were done blooming, and you need to leave that foliage there to feed the rhizome under the ground, but they were stressed. They weren't getting enough water. And so I suppose they were stealing the moisture in the soil from my roses. And then my roses got bugs. And so it really is amazing. It's an amazing ecosystem.
And that's pretty organic, to just get out the hose.
Just get out the hose and water and then mulch. Yeah.
The answer is watering.
So if you have a solution for rabbits, deer, raccoons, so we live out in the country and we let everything free roam. We don't let anybody hunt on our land. So we have all of everything. And whether we like it or not right now, we even have woodchucks wandering around and all the baby raccoons, and they are destructive. So other than a huge fence, tried and true, because I see people have bars of soap and people sprinkle cayenne pepper around. Like, I've read and seen all the things, and I'm assuming nothing other than a fence works, right? Or a BB gun.
Well, so one of our employees has been with us. Oh, she's probably closer to 35 years. And a couple years ago, she was on the internet. She also lives on an acreage, and she was trying to figure out what to do. And she found a horticulture site that sold, I can't believe I'm talking about this, but coyote urine. And I don't want to, I don't want to know how they collect it. But anyway, she decided to order it and try it. And she says she has zero problems after using it. So we did order in coyote urine this year.
A lot of it.
You can tell it's kind of hurting my teeth to even say it. But anyway, anyway, it comes in a liquid form, and it's a bottle, and it has a spray mister that you can put in. So I don't think you have to dilute it. Anyway, you spray it on to the base of whatever it is you want to protect. Like I was talking to a group of gardeners the other day that actually spray their planters, the actual box or the actual pot with this. I guess it only has an odor for a couple hours to humans. That odor goes away, but something lingers for critters that you don't want. And she swears by it. She said this is the 3rd year she's used it. So coyote urine. And we do sell it at Medary Acres. Of course, we're not there now, so we don't have it. But, we will have it again next year. And she swears by it. I forgot to take any, Sarah, before it sold out.
I did too, yeah. And, if anybody's listening to this and has used it, please let us know next year when we open again in the spring. If you liked it, if it worked, like we like to get that feedback.
Speaking of critters, Brian planted pink wave petunias right outside my office window. And the other day I went out, and they were coming so nice. And I went out, and they had all been clipped off, and they were laying out in our yard. And it was squirrels.
Yeah. They're trying to make room for their damn nuts.
Exactly. Exactly.
I want to ask about peonies because, again, I really love the peonies. And I have this big, beautiful one that, like I said, I really can't find another one exactly like it. But I'm wondering, can you divide those? Or is it just like, this is it, this is your bush, you just have to go buy more in order to have more peonies?
Is it okay if I take this one, Sarah?
Yeah, I have never divided a peony, so go ahead.
So there's a couple things about peonies, Stacy. They are this funny, big rhizome, a big, thick, it almost looks like a rock under the ground, okay? And you can divide peonies. What you do is you dig that big rock-like thing up out of the ground. It's a rhizome, but big rock-like thing. And you will see little nubs growing out of that rock. Those are actually new root systems. And you need at least, so say you dig up a big piece of peony root and you want to divide it in half. That's okay. You just have to make sure that there's a minimum of 3 of those nubs on each piece. Okay. And then here's the thing that most people do wrong is they bury that too deep. Peonies, when you transplant them, when you divide them and transplant them, you cannot bury them any deeper than they already were. And that's the biggest problem. That, you want to be good to it, and you want to get it real deep, and, and that's what will kill it. The fall, of course, you don't want to do it now when it's so hot. Fall is the best time to do it. And with peonies or anything you want to move, any kind of perennial that you want to move, it's imperative that you keep it very well watered up until a hard frost. And that's what will winter it over, is that they go into the season very well hydrated. Think about people being hydrated, how much better we are. Well, it's the same thing with peonies and perennials. But with peonies, you have to have a minimum of 3 of those nubs per piece, and do not bury it any deeper than it was already planted.
Oh, great. I'm going to try it, I think, because clearly Jason's he knows what it looks like because he's the one who dug it up. I haven't seen what it looks like. But do you cut off all of the, so the foliage is still there right now? Would I cut all that off?
Well, there's a couple schools of thought on that too. If they're maybe not leave all the foliage, maybe cut it down to a half or a fourth. That foliage, if there's any green in it at all, will continue to send energy down into that root system. The other thing I like to do, and this is pretty organic also, is not for people down in zone 11, which is Florida, but up here in zones 3, 4, 5, our snow load, that foliage helps catch the snow, and snow is actually a very good insulator for perennials.
Oh, sure.
And make sure it's getting the same light situation, like was it getting full morning sun, maybe some shade in the afternoon. Try to match that as closely as you can. That helps in that transplant process also.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about vegetables and herbs. You talked about tomatoes, and you kind of explained a little bit about how to do some mulch and keep maybe some. Are those susceptible to bugs and stuff?
I have not had too many issues with bugs with tomatoes, just in my experience.
You can get bugs, but it seems like it's more fungus that gets tomatoes.
Okay. How about any other, like I just kind of have a list of, there's tomatoes, peppers, onions, peas, all of the green beans and cucumbers. Just, are there any, if you're like, hey, around here, we kind of hear about this a lot and here's kind of a solution. Is there anything on some of those?
Gosh, they're all just so happy to grow and produce that I really don't, I guess I don't have a lot of tips on growing these types. It's more on storing them, and we already touched on that. Don't store them in plastic. Store them in paper or cardboard, whatever. I see on the list here you have herbs. Can you bring these inside for the winter? And that's a 50-50 thing also. I have friends that can bring in their herbs and have beautiful herbs all winter, and I have, from my own experience, I bring them in and they die like the next day. And so, I think it's, do you want to watch them die a slow death and chance it? Or do you just want to let them freeze in the winter, in the fall?
I also kind of get the mentality of like, and maybe this is just me, but sometimes like at the end of the summer when you've been watering so much and you've been doing a lot of work in your garden, you're kind of okay with just letting stuff go a little bit once it gets cold. It's kind of like, okay, we had a good run and now it's time to be done with this.
Right.
And we know a good greenhouse.
Exactly. Can you grow dill inside all year long? Because I've become like addicted to this dill pickle pasta salad that Jason's mom makes. And so I'm always wanting fresh dill. Awesome. Well, and the grocery stores, they don't always have it even. So I just wonder, can you grow dill inside?
It's just so, it's by virtue of how it grows. It's just such a weedy plant, and big.
Yeah, and kind of messy.
Yeah, I think
and smelly.
Yes, I think you're better off freezing it. I know you want fresh, but I think you're better off freezing it or drying it.
Wait, well then tell me about that, because I can do that.
Yeah. Well, my friend had a really good idea for, he was a professional cook for a long time. He's not anymore. But what he said he liked to do with herbs, like towards the end of the summer when you're kind of like, okay, like it's, it's going to freeze here pretty soon. He likes to harvest all of his herbs and then he'll just melt down a bunch of butter. I mean, we're talking like a few sticks of butter, and then throw all of your washed, chopped herbs in with the butter, put the melted butter into a clean ice cube tray, pop that in the freezer. And then throughout the winter, you've got your cute little herbed butter, little frozen cubes that are just easy to like throw in a pan or throw into like soup or whatever you're making.
That sounds like a great idea.
And then you get the butter too, which is, never
right.
Right. Well, and then that wouldn't take up like a ton of space in your freezer. Not that like just freezing them in like a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware or something like that wouldn't take up a ton of room. But I liked the idea of like, you could stack like a few ice cube trays with your little herbed butter mix and it wouldn't take up a ton of room.
What about composting? used to go to Starbucks a lot. They would have buckets of their used coffee grounds. They would say for your garden. I'm like, are you supposed to spread it around? Is that really a thing?
Well, I grew up on a farm and my mom saved all of our coffee grounds, but she mixed it in with other compost. We never just put it straight on the ground. And she grew fabulous gardens and flowers. And so I don't know about, a direct application, but mixed in with other compost, it was beautiful.
Yeah, so probably like eggshells and banana peels and like stuff like that, right? It's kind of like the idea.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Okay. Are there any vegetables that you could plant right now from seed and still get a harvest, like carrots or broccoli or anything like that? Or is it just whatever you have going right now, you just got to keep going, or when it's done, it's done? There's no starting any vegetables now. We're toward the end of July.
Right. No, there's things that you can plant now if you can find the seed or have access to the plant. But one of the things is lettuce. Just about any kind of lettuce you can plant. And I my neighbor plants, I don't know, she probably plants lettuce 3 times during a season just to keep it going, have it nice and fresh. It seems like in the heat it can get a little bit bitter. Another thing, and when you go to restaurants, you're seeing more and more of this pickled radishes. And you can throw out radish seed and that will make it. And particularly if you like to do that kind of project, and these pickled radishes I just had some last night on something that I had at a restaurant, and they're not only delicious, but they're very pretty, in different dishes or as even a garnish on the side.
Yeah.
So
and add like a nice crunch to whatever you're eating.
Right. Radishes and lettuce are for sure 2 things that I know people plant this time of year.
My sister Callie, I know for sure, she plants a ton of lettuce and has way too much lettuce. Well, maybe she wouldn't have to plant as much to begin because she could, maybe plant 3 times, right away and then in the middle and then instead of having so much that she can't even eat all of what comes out. Okay. Okay.
She does drive-by lettucing. She makes bags of it and drives by people's houses and sets it on there. We're coming into that with zucchini pretty soon.
Season. Yep.
And then it'll be apples.
I found a really good and it was pretty easy too. Zucchini, like you kind of make pasta sauce out of like mostly zucchini, and then you just add like a little bit of cream and like Parmesan, and then we kind of used like an immersion blender to kind of make it smooth, and it was pretty good. It wasn't like my favorite thing I've ever made, but I mean it was an effective way to use up like 3 zucchinis in one dish if that's your goal.
I've heard that Carmen Wyka makes like the best zucchini bread, so I need to get her on here and talk about that. Yeah,
the recipe.
You do, and our staff. Oh my gosh, the things they will bake and using, or ingredients from their garden. It's unbelievable. As one of my friends would say, it's so good, it's just sinful.
Right. and it seems like it, but everything is so fresh and delightful. But I know I did ask you guys if you would share a couple of recipes, food or drink that uses any fruits or herbs. Do you have a few that you'll share that I can share on the blog?
Well, I have a little, what I think is a secret herb that I think people are starting to learn about it. It's called stevia. And it is a very natural sugar. And it is a beautiful herb. It gets a little bit big, not like dill, but it gets, a nice sized plant. And I'm not kidding you. You pick off the leaves and you put it in your mouth and you think you've put like a half a teaspoon of sugar in your mouth. It is so good. And particularly the newer growth leaves, they're very, very tender. And what I do during the summer, we all just make mixed fruit bowls, and it's fun to sprinkle a little bit of sugar in there so that they will juice up. But I have gone to using chopped stevia And so it's really pretty. It's like adding chives to potatoes and butter. This is stevia to your fruit. So you've got all this beautiful green in there and the most pleasant sugar taste that's all natural. So it doesn't mess with your blood sugar the way sugar does. And so if you haven't grown stevia, you should try it.
And I'm sure you guys have that in the spring, right? You'll have the plants people can buy.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. You can even pinch off a leaf in the greenhouse and put it in your mouth just to test it, and be very surprised.
I'm totally doing that next year. I'm going to bring a bowl of fruit into the greenhouse, and I'm going to go put one in my bowl.
I also have a really easy, I don't do any canning. I hate to admit that, but I do have a really easy salsa recipe that my friend Chris gave me. And Chris actually does the Medary Acres website. So kind of full, he's part of the team. And he gave me a really easy recipe for salsa, as long as you have a food processor. But you can just eat it fresh and then, store it in the fridge, like in a Tupperware for probably like a week. So it's not necessarily canned, but just if you've got a lot of tomatoes, a lot of peppers, pretty much anything else you would need would just be like an onion and some lime juice and anything else you like to kind of spice it up. But I can share that one because I thought it was really easy and really good.
Yeah. Well, and would it have to be a food processor, or could it be a blender or an immersion
blender? A blender, or if you like your salsa like a little chunkier and you don't mind, it would just take a little longer to chop everything by hand. But I'm sure you could, and maybe it'd be a little more kind of like pico de gallo. But I mean, pico de gallo is delicious too. So
right. Well, I'll share that too. And then, Sarah, did you have a mocktail?
I do. Yep, I can share the mocktail that I made recently with some thyme from my garden. And I mean, you could add alcohol if you wanted to, but yeah, it's delicious without alcohol too.
A couple of things I just want people to start thinking about. So when fall comes and we're getting the frost and our flowers start to die and things like that, just how can we prep our containers that we had our flowers growing in? Because sometimes I'm so lazy I don't even pull out the old stuff and I have to deal with it in the spring, and then I always kick myself for doing that and wished I would have done it in the fall. So I guess one of the big things is obviously you should just take out the old annuals that have died and things, but we can reuse that soil, right? The dirt. I buy some from you guys every year in those big bags, love it, but I just kind of stir it up. Is that okay to do?
Absolutely. And I have some enormous heavy pots out front that I can't put away for the winter. They're just too big. And so I probably every 4 years dump out the soil that we sell from Medary Acres out of those pots and put in new. But as long as you can dig the soil, as long as it's not like hard pan, it's nice and light and fluffy. It doesn't smell. You don't want, if you smell an odor, that's when I dump it. It's just like food going bad in your Tupperware in the refrigerator,
That might be coyote urine.
Yes, it might be coyote urine, or it might just have been sour soil.
I just wanted you to have to say that again.
You're killing me, Stacy. But as long as that soil is nice and fluffy, you can use it over and over for literally years. Like I said, I've used these two big pots probably 4 years now. And so the other thing is, if your pots cannot be in a environment controlled garage or something, basement, just make sure that there's enough room in that pot, take enough soil out so that when it freezes, it doesn't expand and break your pot.
Oh, good point, because it's still moist. Okay, yeah.
Right, there's still a moisture content in there. That's probably the biggest pointer I have, is just if they're going to be outside, take some of the soil out so that it can expand and not break your pot.
Some years I do end up having to just dump the whole thing out because it has all these different roots in there from all the past flowers, and most of it ends up having to kind of get tossed out. But
some plants you put in there that there'll be very little dirt left. It's all roots. So then of course you have to start over. Yeah.
Yeah. I just didn't know if technically you're supposed to like dump the dirt out and then wash your pots every year, because you know what? I don't think I would ever do that. So I just didn't know. Okay.
We could say that to try to sell more dirt, but
Oh, right.
realistically, who's going to do that? No one. And well, I guess I do know a few people that maybe would, but for the most part, if you don't smell an odor, you're okay. You know, something
Okay.
did not go sour in there.
Sure. Okay. And then how about for the ground? Anything that's planted in the ground? I mean, oh my gosh, we have this, you guys, I don't know if this is normal, but we have a false indigo that we bought from you a few years ago. It is like 8 feet across. Are they supposed to be a bush?
Yeah, it's considered a perennial. And so it just loves
huge.
where you have it.
They can get really big.
But we cut the whole thing down darn near to the ground at the end of the year. So, I mean, is that okay to do? I know everything is different. You can't say, yes, do it on everything, or no, don't do it on anything. But do you just kind of have to research what your plants are and what ones you should cut down for perennials?
Right. Well, on perennials, I kind of like a little bit of the old school that again kind of goes into this organic area. I don't cut mine back severely. I might cut them back, maybe to half their size, but I always try to leave stems. And again, in our climate zone, it will catch snow and help with the insulation of the root system of that plant. So I know some gardeners cut their perennials to the ground. They like that look. It's kind of whatever you like, and of course, a lot of perennials, it sure doesn't hurt to mulch them over the winter, particularly things like roses. And again, I believe in using like grass clippings, leaves, even mix in a little bit of dirt so it gives it some weight. Maybe put chicken wire over it on your more susceptible perennials. But otherwise, if you let them insulate with snow, you are technically mulching them. But we could have a winter with no snow too, so it's kind of the look you like, how much work you want to do. If you have access to, I'm sure if you asked your neighbor if you could come over and rake their leaves to take them to mulch, they'd probably say yes, so.
They think I was crazy, but yeah, they would. So like a raspberry bush, Sagen and Sydney, they got a little raspberry bush and she didn't plant it yet. And can she still plant that yet this year, or should she wait till fall?
I think raspberries are so tough. Do you agree, Sarah? They could put it in the ground now, or they could wait till fall.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just make sure it stays really well watered, at least for the first week or two. But yeah, raspberries seem pretty hardy.
Should they kind of put a little thing around it to keep do rabbits and stuff go and chew on it and ruin them right away?
Well, they shouldn't, because there should be thorns on the raspberries. There's even thorns on the leaf bracts, the stems that hold the leaves to the main stem. There's even thorns there. So they shouldn't have to protect that in any way.
Okay. So for winter, how do we as gardeners I know it's exciting to order our seed catalogs and all that kind of thing, but what are some of the things that you can do in the winter to kind of stay garden inspired in the Midwest? Maybe building new raised garden beds out in the shop during the winter. That's a good time to do those kinds of things.
Well, gardening magazines, we all know how exciting that is the week after Christmas. And that's very exciting. But there's when I was a kid, we all had a ton of houseplants, and then that kind of went away, and now it's resurging again. And just houseplants alone will help keep you sane during our long winters. Yeah. And there again, my mom was an avid violet. Oh my goodness, she could raise the most beautiful violets, and she would she'd go into a box store to buy cleaning supplies, but they'd have violets there. And she would pick a sick violet, pay for it, take it home, and nurse it back. That was that was her winter, and so I would strongly encourage people to start trying houseplants. And I know I have a bunch of friends that, oh my gosh, they're taking cuttings from their plants all the time, trying to start them and then give them to their friend, So houseplants could be the absolute answer to all of that. If you have grown some succulents in pots, bring those in, bring those in during the winter and watch the ridiculous things they'll do. They'll set these big stems that are their blossom, and it's ugly, but it's fun to watch it grow, So that's a fairly big phenomenon that's happening in gardening right now.
Mm-hmm. I see, like, a friend of mine, Bobby, she lives down in Sioux Falls, and she does the houseplant things and does those, take the cutting and grow little things in all these little vintage pots. And then she's actually had a little plant sale at her house. So people come, and then she has all these little plants all over that they can buy in these little, it's really cool. But do succulents have to be in the sun?
If you bring them inside, they just need to be in a place, the best light you can give them. Okay. And then the secret to, bringing anything in the house is to not overwater it. We tend to want to water like we did outside, but now we're getting lower and lower light. We're using forced air heat. And so you cut back on the watering, but maybe missed it, to keep the humidity level up around the plant. And so I had another friend who went to a class, and she learned how to root a plant in a moss ball. They actually made the moss ball, put cuttings in there. They were all successful for her, so we all get them as gifts, and they are so fun to have. You grow it in a glass. I've got mine in a glass bowl that she bought at Goodwill, or a secondhand store for pennies, and it's been so fun to watch it, so that's a really good way to get through our winters.
So we'll wrap it up here, but I have just a couple more questions. If you guys have some advice for novice gardeners. So if you think again of, like, my kids in their early 20s, kind of starting out, just young, what do you have any advice for them?
Don't give yourself any boundaries. If you're in a garden center, or you're in a big box store, you're at somebody's house, and you see something you like, try it. That's, all of these fabulous gardeners we have working with us, trust me, when they started out, they have hilarious garden stories, about putting 6 giant marigold plants in one little pot, and it didn't work, because they need more space than that. And so you are not, as a novice gardener, we've all been there, and it's fun. It's fun to learn it by trial and error. And don't worry about the color scheme. Don't worry about, is this the right thing or not? Just try it. And it's fun. You're learning as you're going. You may, and still to this day, even though my staff has all this experience, there are things you couldn't give to them to grow. They disliked it that much, but then there's other things that they love. And we're real honest with our customers. If we can tell somebody's a novice and they're going to try something, they want to try something, we'll say, now that one is a little bit tough to grow, but here's what you do. And if you still want to try it, please do. But if just don't put any boundaries around yourself, try it.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines, like, try not to overthink it. Like, remember that it's fun. And, in the summer, I just enjoy, I really like gardening because it's just a reason to, like, be outside, right? Put your sunscreen on and, like, put your favorite podcast on, or, like, some fun music, and just, you're outside, you're in nature, you can just kind of relax and be doing something at the same time. I feel like gardening is one of those few things where, like, you are working on something and doing something, but it's also very, like, zen and relaxing. And I think if you just kind of remember that and not overthink it, and just ask people, if you have questions, ask, or do a little Google search. It's not a bad thing to feel like you don't know something or need a little help or a little advice. And I think the other biggest thing too is just most plants that you buy have tags. the biggest thing I think is that can be hard when you're first starting out is just look to see what kind of light the plant needs. Like just see if it can take like sun or shade or a little bit of both. I feel like that's a really good place to start, is just kind of know what type of sun you get and then plant things that'll do well for that type of sun would be, I think it's a good place to start.
Right. Those are great ideas. I like Lynn too, just like you're saying, just try things, because that really is how you kind of learn what some of your favorites are. And if you save those tags, sometimes I'll just leave whatever I'm putting in a container. I leave all the tags off in the side of that, kind of buried in the dirt, so that if I really loved something in there or didn't like something, I can just kind of note, like, let's try to make sure we get to Medary Acres early this year to get some of those, before they're gone or something. And other than the light thing, I mean, I just grab what I love and I just plop it all together in different places. And sometimes things work and sometimes things don't. But like you're saying, there's no wrong way. For most things, there's just a better way, or you learn as you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. We see new gardeners overthinking it way too often, or even established gardeners. You just can't go wrong. I mean, there's beautiful colors. There are no colors you can't put together in your garden.
Yeah, I like mixing just being like psycho color palette and just all the colors.
Yeah.
I like how that looks. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, and I like big, tall, free growing things, and some people like their gardens to be in perfect rows and matching. It's all beautiful. It's all beautiful, and so learn your style. Don't put any borders on yourself. Learn your style.
That's a great point. Everybody does have a style, and it's kind of that all over the place. You have the wild prairie garden look, or the very perfect in rows. And anyway, it's so personality that you do what you want and it's going to be perfect because it's what you like.
Yeah, exactly.
If there's seasoned garden, I know my mother-in-law Marie, she's a very seasoned gardener. So do you have any surprise type things that even seasoned gardeners don't know, or anything that's kind of new? Or I couldn't really think of anything.
Yeah, well, Stacy, for a seasoned gardener, I would say probably the biggest thing is to, whatever your garden center is that you like to go to, or multiple garden centers, your good garden centers, which I'd like to think we're one of them. Thank you. We keep totally up on new product. I mean, Sarah has been working on plant product. I mean, we're established enough that it takes 7 years to get new plant product on the market, but through all the testing and everything that has to be done. And we know 3 years out when that new product is going to hit. And Sarah makes sure that we have, either it's a new plant product, either it's a new variety, maybe it's a new hybridized plant. Yes. And Sarah knows all that. She's already got things that she knows about 3 years out. Brian was the same way. And so when you go to a garden center that's established like ours, we can tell you those new products that are up and coming, what they do. And here's the fun thing. When we get really new things and new varieties, new colors, we ask our staff to take it home and plant it. I mean, we don't charge them. We just say, take this home and plant it and tell us what you think, And some years they come back and go, that's the worst thing I've ever grown. And sometimes they come back and go, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell our gardeners about this. So that's what a seasoned gardener is going to find at an operation like ours.
Yes, which also leads me back to the novice gardeners, to those same established places, but like Medary Acres with your staff, if you don't know where to start or what to do or what something is, I mean, go there, because you all will talk and help learn if somebody's asking questions, because you live it. When you're at home, you're planting these things and know how to help. So don't be afraid to ask the actual people at the greenhouses. You don't have to, sit on the internet, go there and look. But I remember when you guys got the candy corn vine, Remember that
Yep.
year?
Yes.
Yeah. And there weren't very many of them, and then the next year there were a little bit more, but they still sold out pretty quickly. And I love seeing the evolution of those different things. So, yeah.
Right. And nobody likes talking about gardeners more than gardeners. And when you
Yes.
come into an establishment like ours, oh my, you might have to say, wait a minute, I got to get back to work or something, to get away from us. But
Bring
Yes.
a notepad and a pen, that's for sure,
Yep.
because you're going to get a lot. Yeah. Well, you guys, where can we find Medary Acres? What's your web address, street address, your social media channels?
Yeah, our address is we're on kind of the south end of Brookings. It's 1100 8th Street South in Brookings. We're pretty close to the high school. We're like a mile west of Hy-Vee. Those are kind of big markers that we use to tell people where we're at. Our website is nice and easy. It's medaryacres.com. And shout out to our friend Chris, who takes care of our website for us and also gave me the salsa recipe that I'll share with you. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram if you search Medary Acres on those platforms.
Sure. Both Lynn and Sarah, thank you. And Brian, we're sorry you couldn't join, but we had fun without you.
well, and Stacy, this was really fun. We'd love to come back, and shout out to you. Stacy helped us grow to where we are today. When she was in marketing, you helped us put up our very first website, Stacy. You helped us with marketing. And so shout out to you. That's how long
Yes.
we've been friends.
Wow.
And so thank you, dear.
It takes a village.
Yep, exactly. And we're a small community, and I love to watch you guys grow. And I'm super excited, Sarah, for you to come in and take the business. And
Thank you.
hopefully I'll be able to be a customer for 50 more years.
Yes, that's the goal.
So as long as I have a beer fridge, I can garden. So
Excellent.
all right. Thank you. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Stacy.
It was a real treat to visit with Lynn and Sarah. There's no shortage of laughter with this family, that's for sure. So I'll try to get them to come back, Brian too, in the spring, because I want them to share all of the neat things that I've learned from them and their staff. They're great staff. Lynn was very right about that. Over the years, I've learned a lot from them about container gardening, planting vegetable gardens. Plus, they know a lot about growing roses, and I have some questions about asparagus and strawberries that I didn't ask in this episode. Well, thanks for pressing play today. I hope you're inspired to try something new. Since the greenhouse is closed until spring of 2024, you'll want to check out medaryacres.com to learn more tips and browse their plant lists. Plus, you'll find information about which plants you can have that attract butterflies and hummingbirds. There's so much to see there. You'll want to bookmark their site and then just use it for inspiration throughout the winter. The recipes for Sarah's mocktail and Chris's salsa are on randomsweets.com. And then speaking of herbs, I thought of 2 pasta salads that are on my blog that are really garden friendly for this time of year. So Marie's dill pickle pasta salad, it uses fresh dill and white onion. And then if you search for salami pasta salad, that one uses fresh oregano, basil, green onions, and garlic. So if you're enjoying this podcast, rating it and writing a review are really great ways to show your support. For the review, just write a sentence or 2 about why you tune in, or mention which are maybe your favorite episodes and what you liked about them, or what you're loving or want to hear more of. I hope you subscribe to Funeral Potatoes and Wool Mittens wherever you get your favorite shows, and set up for notifications when a new episode's available. And then be sure to download them to your phone so that you can listen to them while you're tending to your garden. Sweet wishes!